At a team meeting, my supervisor slammed my project binder on the table and barked, "This is my work now, you're lucky to even be in the same room as me." When I said, "But I spent weeks on that," he laughed loudly and announced, "Well, good luck getting credit when I'm your only reference." HR was supposed to protect me, but what they did instead made me realize just how alone I really was in that office. My name's Erica Lynn, and I used to be the kind of employee who kept her head down and believed that hard work would speak for itself. I was 34 when this happened. I'd been working at a logistics company in Toledo, Ohio, for over 6 years. We handled inventory tracking, delivery scheduling, and routing for small businesses across the Midwest. I wasn't anyone fancy, not a manager, not someone who gave speeches at company dinners. I just did my job, and I did it damn well. People used to come to me with questions before they even tried asking their leads. I had systems for everything. I stayed late when no one else would. I trained the new hires without being asked. I solved problems when things broke down. I even brought extra phone chargers to work because someone always forgot theirs. I wasn't flashy, but I was reliable. Then came Craig Denton. Craig got hired as a supervisor about 2 years ago. He came from some big warehouse chain, kept name-dropping places like Chicago and Detroit like it made him sound important. Tall, cocky, walked around with a Bluetooth in his ear like he was calling in drone strikes instead of checking delivery routes. From day one, he rubbed people the wrong way, but he had a way of talking that made upper management eat out of his hand. I kept my distance. I tried to stay out of his way and focused on my work. But the closer it got to our quarterly team presentation, the more involved he became. And by involved, I mean hovering behind me when I worked, asking for updates on things he didn't understand, and always finding a way to remind me, "This needs to reflect well on me." The project was a new routing system I'd designed from scratch. I noticed patterns in our delivery times and fuel usage, and I built a model that adjusted schedules automatically based on traffic history, weather data, and customer preferences. It was my baby. I even tested it with one of our smaller delivery zones, and it improved turnaround by nearly 12%. It took me 7 weeks. I worked weekends. I skipped dinners with friends. I was proud of it. 3 days before the presentation, I sent Craig the final draft. Just for review. That was my mistake. The morning of the meeting, I walked into the big conference room with my thick binder, 90 pages of hard work. On the cover, in bold black letters, Routing Optimization Model authored by Erica Lynn. Craig was already in there, sipping from his stupid insulated mug and tapping on his phone. He gave me a quick nod like he barely knew me. The meeting started. Our director, a guy named Jeff who always seemed to be in a rush, looked at Craig and said, "Let's hear about the new model." That's when it happened. Craig reached across the table, grabbed my binder and slammed it down in front of himself. The sound echoed. Everyone jumped. Then he looked around the room and said, with this smug-ass grin, "This is my work now, you're lucky to even be in the same room as me." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do. I said, "But I spent weeks on that." And he laughed. Louder. "Well, good luck getting credit when I'm your only reference." Then he opened the binder and launched into my presentation like it was just another day. He didn't stumble once. He knew it all. My words, my graphs, even the small jokes I'd added to lighten the tone. He took credit for everything while I sat there frozen, humiliated in front of 15 people who said nothing. Not a single person looked at me. Not one. When the presentation ended, they clapped. The director said, "This is exactly the kind of thinking we need." Craig gave a fake humble shrug and said, "Just trying to lead by example." I went back to my desk in a fog. I couldn't even remember walking there. I just sat down and stared at my screen. That afternoon, I went straight to HR. I didn't even clock out. Their office was 2 floors down and smelled like someone sprayed too much citrus Febreze. The woman behind the desk, her name tag said Tasha, gave me a look like she'd already dealt with 10 problems before lunch. I told her everything. I brought my drafts, my emails to Craig, even a note I'd sent him 2 weeks earlier asking if he had any feedback. She listened quietly. Nodded a lot. Then she sighed and said, "You should be flattered. Craig sees potential in you. Maybe focus on being a team player right now." I stared at her. He stole my work. We don't really use words like stole. It was a team project, right? I left that office shaking. I didn't know if I wanted to cry or scream or punch a wall. I didn't even go back to my desk. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, just gripping the steering wheel. That's when it hit me, no one was coming to help me. I was alone. But I wasn't weak. And I wasn't going to let that smug bastard walk all over me. He wanted to play games? Fine. He had no idea who he was playing with. I didn't quit right away. I knew that's what he'd expect. People like Craig count on the silence of the people they step on. They think if they humiliate you loud enough, you'll just disappear to make it easier for everyone else. But I stayed. I stayed and smiled. I nodded when he called meetings. I brought him coffee once. I pretended like everything was fine. But at night, I planned. First thing I did was start documenting everything. Every interaction. Every time he used one of my ideas in a meeting without credit. Every time he forgot to CC me on a client email and then told people I was disorganized. I kept screenshots. I saved voice memos. I made copies of old files. I kept backups on a USB I wore on a necklace like a damn dog tag. Then I started talking to people quietly. One-on-one. I found out I wasn't the only one Craig had stepped on. Luis, the shipping coordinator, told me Craig stole a proposal he made for truckload rebalancing and took credit for it in a VP call. Maya, a temp turned full-timer, said Craig told her she wasn't a culture fit after she corrected him in a meeting. 3 weeks later, she was gone. All of us had stories. All of us had stayed silent. Until now. I started gathering them. But I knew HR wouldn't help. They were in Craig's pocket or worse, afraid of him. So I found another way in, compliance. Turns out our company had a little-known, legally required internal audit group that monitored ethics complaints separate from HR. Buried in the employee handbook was a clause that allowed anonymous reports directly to the compliance officer. Not many people knew about it. I wrote the report like a lawyer. Laid out timelines. Dates. Names. Attachments. I didn't make it emotional. I made it look like a liability. The last page had a warning in bold. Failure to address these ethics violations may result in external whistleblower contact with the Department of Labor and media outlets. I submitted it. And then I waited. 2 weeks passed. Nothing. Craig was louder than ever. Gave himself a new title in his email signature, Strategic Operations Architect. What the hell that even meant, I don't know. He walked around like a goddamn king. Then, suddenly, one Monday morning, he wasn't at the meeting. The director ran it himself. No explanation. People whispered, but no one said anything outright. Later that day, Craig's office was cleared out. Like, completely empty. Even his Bluetooth earpiece was gone. HR stayed silent. But I got an email. Anonymous, of course. It just said, "Your report led to a full investigation. Thank you." You'd think that would be the end, right? No. 3 weeks later, I got called into HR. Not for a promotion. Not for thanks. For a performance review reassessment. They were trying to push me out quietly. They said my attitude had changed. That I wasn't being collaborative. That they had concerns about how I interact with leadership. Craig was gone, but the rot was still there. I realized something then: if I stayed, they'd bury me. Slowly. Quietly. I had to go. But not before I really made my point. I didn't react in that HR meeting. I sat there nodding, acting like I was grateful for the feedback. But inside, something hardened. They didn't fire Craig to do the right thing. They did it to protect themselves. Now they were hoping I'd just go away without a fuss. I decided I would go. But on my terms. That night, I went home and pulled out that same USB drive I'd been wearing. I added a few new files to it. Then I made copies, one for myself, one for a friend in legal, and one that I hid where I knew it'd never be traced back to me. Then I reached out to someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Kara, a friend from college who now worked as a contributor for a major business news blog. She covered toxic workplace culture, HR cover-ups, and whistleblower cases. I told her I had a story not just about Craig, but the system that protected him. She told me she'd need evidence. I gave her everything. Not just the stuff about Craig, the full pattern of cover-ups. The retaliation. The fake reviews. The HR coaching people to keep complaints internal and off-record. It painted a clear picture. They weren't protecting employees. They were managing liability. Kara ran with it. The story dropped 2 weeks later, under the headline, "Inside the Logistics Company Silencing Its Workers, Stolen Work, Suppressed Reports, and One Whistleblower Who Fought Back." I wasn't named in it legally, I couldn't be, but the story made waves. My project was referenced in the article. Craig's promotion stealing was quoted by multiple sources. Even the ethics report made it in. It blew up. Local news picked it up. Industry blogs started running breakdowns. Former employees started talking online. A former HR intern posted a long thread on Twitter confirming everything and adding screenshots of her own. And that's when the company started to really panic. 2 VPs were put on leave. The head of HR stepped down for personal reasons. An external audit firm was brought in. Investors started asking questions. Meanwhile, I handed in my 2 weeks. They tried to walk me out the next day, but I'd already spoken to a lawyer. Retaliation after a whistleblower report is illegal, and my friend Kara made sure they knew I still had receipts. So instead of pushing me out, they offered me a separation package. I took it. And I took my story with me. I could have stopped there. I had my name cleared. Craig was gone. The company was bleeding PR-wise. My NDA was full of holes, thanks to how they handled the retaliation. I could have walked away quietly. But I didn't. Because I wasn't just angry about what happened to me. I was angry for everyone they stepped on. The temps they burned through like paper. The women they pushed out for being too difficult. The people who were bullied into silence. So I did one more thing. I sent the story, and the full report, to every client I had worked with over the past 3 years. I didn't accuse. I just shared the facts. This is what's been happening behind the scenes. You trusted us with your logistics. You should know who you've been working with. Within a month, 3 of our top 5 contracts pulled out. That company lost millions. And me? I started fresh. Kara connected me with a small but growing logistics tech firm out of Chicago. They read the article. They knew my name. They didn't ask for references, they asked if I'd be willing to build something from scratch. I said yes. 6 months later, I was leading a team of 10. We were building software from the ground up, and this time, my name was on every part of it. And Craig? I heard from a friend that he tried to sue for wrongful termination. The case was tossed. Apparently, someone had dug up an old NDA he'd forced a junior analyst to sign back at his old job. Something about pressuring her to turn in her report under his name. That company had buried it. But now it was resurfacing. Last I heard, Craig was managing a strip mall shipping center in suburban Michigan. No Bluetooth earpiece. No team. No name. As for the company, they survived, but they'll never be what they were. You can't fix rot with paint. And me? I learned something. Not just about betrayal, but about revenge. It's not always loud. Sometimes, it's quiet. Methodical. Legal. And sometimes, it comes with a severance check and a better job offer. But it always starts the same way. With someone saying, "You're lucky to be in the same room as me." Not realizing they were lucky to have you there in the first place.